Welcome, everyone, to MS Confidential, where we host monthly gatherings and candid conversations about life with multiple sclerosis and other chronic diseases as well. Our show today is called This Is Your Brain on MS. And don't worry if you don't have MS, this is largely a discussion about how mental health affects our chronic illnesses of all kinds. After all, body and mind, they go hand in hand. We can't be served a life-altering diagnosis that affects every psychosocial, emotional aspect of our lives without it affecting our mental health. Anxiety, depression, addiction, panic disorder, to name a few, are some of the more common companions to our physical symptoms. But for others, it's more of a stripping away of self-confidence and self-worth that are the more noticeable burdens. And then those are overlaying this constant sense of defeat and malaise. So mental health is a hot topic these days, but people with living with chronic illness and the inevitable toll it takes on our mental health isn't as much a part of this conversation as I'd like it to be. So let's turn towards our panelists today to facilitate a broadening of this discussion and learn how our brains are on MS. Please chime in with questions and comments during this discussion. We love hearing from you. I'm going to briefly introduce our panelists and then just jump right in because we've got a lot to talk about. First, we have Elizabeth Jamieson, director of MS Confidential, artist, writer, patient advocate, and human extraordinaire. Kyle Cronick, who is currently studying for his master's in accounting and has amazing entrepreneurship goals, growing fungi, medicinal fungi, and Annie Brewster, assistant professor at Harvard, practicing physician and founder of Health Story Collaborative. So if you want to learn more about our guests, we have lots more information on them over on unfixedmedia.com. My name is Kimberly, founder and director of Unfixed, and I'm here to just keep the conversation flowing and chime in with my own chronic illness experiences. So let's dive in. I want to just check in today because I hate the question of how are you doing in general, but how is MS affecting your brain and your state of mind today? Who wants to start off?
Today I'm doing pretty good because I started the day with physical therapy, and anytime I start my day moving my body, I just end up having a better day.
Elizabeth, what about you?
I'm great, but I have some bit of anxiety when I'm taping MS Confidential because I worry that I'll laugh inappropriately or that I won't. My voice will give out. All sorts of MS symptoms. They're always in the background, and that produces anxiety when I'm taping or lecturing or giving talks or doing anything that I care about. But other than that, I'm okay. More than okay.
What about you, Annie?
Yeah, so I'd say I'm having a good day. In terms of thinking about my MS, I haven't done a lot of that in part because I've been really busy, but I think sometimes that's a shield for me. I like to keep moving, and then maybe that makes me not think about it, which is sometimes adaptive and sometimes not.
I can relate to that one. I want to know formerly, for you, Elizabeth, specifically, you mentioned some anxiety that comes up when you do presentations and things like this. You were a lawyer for a long time. Was anxiety a part of your life at all before MS, or is this specific to MS?
I'm sure it was, but I'm sure there's anxiety with everyone, depending on what's going on. So yeah, I'm sure. But now I have different type of anxiety. It's always in the background.
Kyle, do you lean into more of the anxiety with MS too? Or I know you've spoken in the past about depression being part of the MS experience.
Yeah, honestly, anxiety is kind of newfound for me. I'm experiencing, I was telling you, Kimberly, I'm experiencing what kind of seems like mini panic attacks just out of nowhere. I just like all of a sudden feel like crazy overwhelmed, and it can last a few seconds, it can last all day. Um, Luckily, I'm not experiencing that much now, but I don't know what that was, or what's going on there. Maybe it's MS. I don't know.
Have you never had that before, Kyle?
I've never experienced that. No.
Yeah.
But when I tell people like the symptoms, like I get crazy nauseous just out of nowhere, and kind of panicky.
Mm.
Several people have said it sounds kind of like panic attacks, but that's new to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, the depression, I feel like luckily nowadays it has less of a hold on me than it did in the past, even when I was able-bodied before MS. Um, Maybe that's just the techniques that I've done to treat my MS, or therapy, or I don't know what it is, but I feel like I've got a better hold on it now than ever.
Can I ask kind of a medical question? And I mean, maybe you've spoken with your practitioners about this, but there's the physical anxiety, depression, things that actually are, I would guessing, adaptations in your brain because of the MS. And then there's the like, this sucks mental issues that come too. So do you see that there's the distinction, or do
Course,
you
yeah.
feel, so do you feel like some of it is purely just like the physical changes that are happening in your brain that are causing this anxiety?
Yeah,
I think it's kind of impossible to sort out completely though, right? Because
it's
one
hard to, yeah,
one feeds the other, right? Like even if you're, who knows, the MS probably could do something to our brains that makes us more anxious or depressed. But also when we're depressed or anxious and we're creating more sort of stress hormones in our body, that probably has a negative impact on our brain health. You know, so one
for
feeds
sure.
the other.
It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, I'm wondering this because this is similar to my experience and people that I've talked to within the vestibular community. Anxiety is like the worst thing that you can do when you start to feel dizzy, is to feel anxious about it. But like when it first starts and you're nauseous and dizzy, like why wouldn't you feel anxious? Because
That's the other thing.
natural
It's
response.
dizziness. It's like vertigo. It's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah. So what are some things that you guys are contending with in the mental health arena that are connected to this diagnosis long term? You know, like Elizabeth, you spoke about in an email how you feel like the depression is sort of just underlying, it's always there. But then you have this insecurity of your self-worth that's more of these daily kind of burdens.
I wouldn't say I've suffered from depression, blanket depression. Certainly, there have been times when I was terribly depressed. I'm not denying that, but I don't feel I've ever not wanting to get up and do things. In fact, I am constantly working, and I don't even consider it working, but doing wonderful things. I love my life, but when I found out I'm experiencing more aphasia, my disease is progressing, where then I got really not so much depressed, but I don't know what you call it. My life was on end again, topsy-turvy, and I just need to become peaceful with my MS. That's what I've been working on. And I think I've shared that in other episodes, that it's constant work on how to make peace with your brain on MS.
Yeah. I think like I hear like the theme of control, like, of course, at various points we feel like we have more or less control over our symptoms. But for me, the hardest part of MS, and I have been very lucky in terms of not having a ton of physical symptoms, though I do have some vertigo and some leg weakness sometimes. But for me, it's more the uncertainty, the
Yeah.
living with that
Right.
uncertainty, that lack of control over not knowing what's going to
Right.
happen.
Yeah.
And that can fuel a ton of anxiety. And so, yeah, my journey has been to try to learn how to live with that uncertainty. And of
Right.
course, you can spin it in a way to say, okay, that unknown is, well, like you were saying to me recently, Kyle, like the whole concept of impermanence, right?
Mhm.
It's nothing is permanent. That's anxiety provoking in a way, but it's also freeing in a way. It's really
Yeah.
like, you don't know what's going to happen. Nothing's going to
Right.
last. It's all going to change. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've reframed impermanence in my mind just recently, and it's so good. It used to be such a negative thing, like, oh, nothing's gonna last. This relationship's not gonna last. Nothing's gonna last. But now, like when I'm feeling shitty, that's not gonna last.
Mm.
Yeah.
I feel great right now.
Wow.
So I'm
So
glad.
it sounds like you're saying reframing these somewhat stigmatized things like uncertainty and
Yeah.
depression, and just reframing them a little bit sounds like it's helpful.
For sure. And I've found just in doing kind of therapy sessions and just noticing my thinking processes and how I get to depressed states, where what I'm thinking about, and trying to reframe that, and it's been super effective for me.
Yeah.
Have any of you suffered from depression? What one
Yeah,
considers depression?
yeah. When I was 16 or 17, my dad was taking me to a psychologist, and she uh, determined that I was suffering from uh, major depressive disorder. Um, and they put me on antidepressants, but those things just exacerbated the issue and made me suicidal. And I have not touched antidepressants since then. So in 15 years.
Wow.
Have
I'd
you?
say I haven't had like major depression, major depressive disorder where like you said, Elizabeth, like where I can't get out of bed. But I would say I have what in medical terms we call like dysthymia, which is sort of like this sort of unsettled, more discontentedness or sadness that's like there, but at a lower level.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like I have that now. But I think part of what I do, my coping, is to try to sort of outrun it. And that's not, again, that's not always a good coping. But, as long as I keep moving and doing things, but that, sitting still is hard for me. And so I think that's my work, is to try. And I'm seeing a therapist right now, and she keeps saying to me, slow down, just
Yeah.
slow down.
Yeah.
Because I'm always, on the move, whether it's in thinking or actual emotion. But for me, like also something that helps me when I feel anxious is to like think, okay, what can I control? What can I plan for? How can I plan? What are the next steps I can take? But with uncertainty, you can't do that. Like you can't plan because you don't really know. And that's my challenge. But I don't like, I'm not saying this in a toxic positivity way. I also feel like it is my challenge in a good way, and that really it's uncertain for all of us. We could walk out the door and get hit by a truck. We're just like forced to think of it that way. Like it's more in our face.
True.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe that's a learning. I don't know. I'm not saying it's good, but it has pushed me in a way that maybe is helpful to live with that.
Yeah, to be able to I think a lot of people don't have to have uncertainty in their face until they have a chronic illness. I mean, truly, even like going through a divorce, it's like, okay, there's this uncertainty for a couple of years, but then things settle. We go back to our routines, we find new partners or whatever. But chronic illness, it's uncertainty all the time.
Forever. Forever.
Yeah.
And it's progressive.
Yeah.
So it's uncertain and a downhill projection, depending on what kind of MS you have. It's slower or not. It's not slow at all.
Yeah. I mean, hearing you speak, Elizabeth, about what you're going through with the changes that you've had to deal with recently of your voice or the emotional stuff, the laughter, that is like so challenging. That is the loss of control right there in a very clear way to see. And that must be really scary, I imagine.
It's terrifying at times.
Yeah.
But I think I'm like you, Annie. I keep moving. It's like if I don't keep moving, I feel like I have to run. I hope I'm not running from MS, but I suspect I feel like, well, I do feel I need to accomplish things until it's too late. So I feel that my disease progression is ongoing, and if I don't do it now, I'll never be able to do it.
I'm the
Yeah.
same way.
But the positive side of that is like, look at like the amazing stuff both of you have created, right?
Yeah, you
I
get
mean,
shit done.
Yeah. It is such a different way of living, though. I'm thinking, a lot of people just have their like 10-year plans. I've never taken one of those like life coaching courses or whatever, but they probably have something like, what's your 10-year plan in there? That is out the door.
Yeah, no.
When you have something that's progressive, or in my case, I know in the vestibular community, they talk a lot about the unpredictability. Like you feel great, and then all of a sudden, next morning you're like as bad as you were on the day one, and you don't know why, and then you write it out, and then you feel great again, So how do you make a plan for life with that?
You just got to go with the flow. That's something that I have really been trying to do. Just let it be. Not saying that I'm not doing everything.
It's so hard.
It is so hard because, I mean, I want to control whatever I can control.
Right.
But
so give us Kyle, like, how do you do that? I'm curious because that is so hard to like let it be. Like, are there techniques you use to help yourself do that?
Maybe it's the meditation that I do, being consistent with it. Lately, it's been releasing other people's expectations of me, which has been fairly freeing. Like my parents, they put on me that I'm not doing enough. Even though, regarding my healthcare. And I think I'm doing everything I can do. What else can I do?
What in the world do they expect?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I haven't seen my dad in 6 years. This is my 12th year with MS, so it's been half of my diagnosis since he's seen me, and a lot has happened in those 6 years. I've progressed a lot. Last time he saw me, I was walking with a cane. Now I'm sitting in my wheelchair here. I'm a wheelchair user most of the time. So
Yeah. Well, I commend you for like trying to let go of other people's expectations. That's not easy.
it is not, it is the hardest thing in the world, but I feel much lighter. I think that weighs me down so much and adds to just depressive thoughts, and
Mhm.
uh, it's it's been it's been helpful. I wish I could tell you how I've been able to do it. Because it's
I asked this question over on social media yesterday around shame, the
Mhm.
shame that accompanies chronic illness. And
Yeah.
how do you, what's your relationship to shame? It sounds, Kyle, like you, in some way, letting go of other people's expectations has really helped.
Yeah,
Um,
it's helped, but it still just gets me. Like just the other day, one of my parents, we were talking, and they were saying how impressed they were with my sister and all of her healthy habits, and they were like, at least one of my children took after my healthy habits.
hmm.
Days.
That's what you heard? That's what
Like
someone said? Oh, no.
verbatim.
Oh, no. What
Like
was your response?
uh in the past I probably would have gotten really fucking angry. But I was like, not worth it. Moving on.
Yeah. See, that's hugely freeing, the not worth it part.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's
That's
just
what
not
it
worth
is.
it. And like, I think just with age, we get some of that wisdom of like,
Maybe
that's just
so.
not worth it. But
Maybe
also
that's what
like
it is.
the pause for me, that pause between when you might
Yeah,
have anger, the pause is helpful.
it's very helpful. So
Wow.
that's my advice. Pause.
Mhm.
Just take a deep breath.
Yeah.
It it may seem like simple advice, but
Powerful.
damn, it
Wow.
can help.
Because I do think that's a huge part of it, of like what we absorb from the people around us and
Yeah.
what we take in, the expectations. Also, I just think in the world right now, there's so much negativity and anxiety in
Oh,
general. So how do we
exactly.
sort of insulate ourselves?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Really, in answer to your question, um, from what you posted on social media yesterday, my constant problem is the fact of my husband. I he plays such an important role in taking care of me. Which I have a lot of shame, and I'm worried that I will bring him down. That because he's we sleep together in the same room, and my ventilator goes off, or I need to uh, be turned, or the covers need to go down or up, and I wake him up. I feel like I feel horrible, and he can't take vacations because carting my wheelchair around, and I'm a drag.
No,
And
you're not.
well, no, I am. I thank you. But living with someone can't hike, can't do all sorts of things without,
It's tough.
pardon,
It's tough.
it's
I can't relate exactly with that, but I feel what you're saying, because my partner does so many things for me, and I I can't help but ask for help. It's
It's the distinction, like Lisa just chimed in and said, your MS is a drag, but not you.
yeah,
yeah, that's really nice to say. Doesn't mean anything to me. I
Yeah.
really think it's sort of bullshit in terms of I look at him and he's exhausted because I kept him up 2 hours in the middle of the night, and he had his own agenda, things that he wanted to do, and he's exhausted. And it's MS, but whatever, it's fine point that he looks at me and goes, God, Liz, you're killing me. I can't do this anymore. I can't stay up all night. Not all night, but you're interrupting my sleep. I can't handle it. And it doesn't matter if it's MS, but I just am so sad, and I'm sad for David that he chose me as a spouse. I really feel that a lot.
He's lucky.
He is
Heavy.
lucky.
It's
He
really
is
heavy.
lucky. It is. I totally
You're
feel
still such a badass.
Painful though.
it is painful. It is.
It is.
I guess like where my mind went, you know, sitting with that pain, that's incredible. But also to remember that he is making a choice, right?
Yeah.
He has some agency in this to say, I can't do this. I'm not going to do it right now. And he's choosing to do it. You're not forcing him to do it. But I know that's nuanced and complex and blurry. But I don't know. It's like, I think when people help us, sometimes they do get something back from that emotionally to be able to help can feel good. But obviously,
I think
to a point.
Is there anything he could say that would make you not feel that way? Like in a perfect scenario, is there anything that you could imagine?
Well, he could be perfect, but he's not as human. But he could be perfect. I could be perfect, but I'm not going to be perfect. So I don't know.
So there's nothing he could ever probably say that would assuage those feelings.
Well, I didn't say that. I'm sure he could say and buy me things. He could do all sorts of things, but he ain't going to do that because he's human, and
Yeah.
it's just the muckiness of intimacy. But I'm so thankful for him, as I just can't get out of bed without him, or out of bed, in bed, help me go to the bathroom. I have wonderful, wonderful caregivers, but they go home, and he's left with me, and he loves me, so he's wonderful. But I worry that he's gonna die or something. I do worry that I'm adding such a stress on him, the burden. But that's not our topic.
Well, it is though. It's part of the depression. I know you said you don't experience depression, but there's this underlying, I think you used the word malaise or something in your email to me, where it's like this heaviness that is always there.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's heavy to be carrying that around with you.
Yeah.
And a sadness.
MS is just inherently depressing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yes. Let's see. Elizabeth disappeared, so maybe she'll come back. But she's muted right now, so that's okay. Can I intercept a little anecdote here for my own life? Okay, so something I'm learning, this is new discovery for me. Annie, this is even newer than what you've read in my little personal memoir-ish thing. I have recently heard that a lot of people that have what I have, MDDS, also have undiagnosed OCD. And there's a researcher over in France that's kind of drawing some connections between this. And I definitely had like tics as a kid that were my way of managing lack of control. I had weird bodily like shoulder things and face things, and then that slowly developed into obsessive thinking, like the looping thinking. And I never thought, like, I always thought OCD was this, ew, don't touch the doorknob thing.
Right.
And I'm learning that it can be a form of it can be just like thoughts that don't stop, and you end up feeling trapped in your head because it will not stop. And the thing that I would always fixate on were bodily sensations, like, oh, my stomach hurts. But it's not just, oh, my stomach hurts, but it's like, I can't think about anything else in life other than my stomach hurts, and it will loop for fucking 12 hours. And so when these symptoms of dizziness started, it was 24/7. I feel nauseous, I feel sick, I feel dizzy, and it was like hell. But here's the interesting twist, and I want to like take this back to you guys and reflect on it. My brain, so there's this thing with OCD therapy where you expose the person over and over and over again to the thing that they're most afraid of.
Mhm.
So in a way, my brain created exactly what it needed to heal, which is forced me to feel uncomfortable in my body 24/7.
Yeah.
And for 2.5 years, yeah, I was panicked. I hated it. It was hell on earth. But then one day my brain finally was like, oh, this is so exhausting. Like, I don't care anymore. I'm uncomfortable. So what? And
Yeah.
it kind of weirdly healed that OCD pattern of thinking. Because now I'm like, oh, fuck it. I don't care. I'm uncomfortable. Big deal. You know?
I
So
love it.
isn't
Maybe
it
that's what
weird?
I've been experiencing too.
You
Maybe
think?
it's increased the fuck it, and I've been able to let it go, let it be.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think sometimes like our brains are just like, whoa, panic mode, you know, the auga, it's going like the flames are going and
Because
everything.
I feel like
weird.
my mind was constantly looping too negatively, and yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you there. Yeah.
And there's something liberating finally about going, oh, well, it's okay, you know, and then the looping stops suddenly. It just doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. I love that.
Isn't that
I love that.
interesting? So it makes me just wonder, like, not trying to put like a toxic positivity spin on this, but how our mental states or these mental like depression, anxiety, shame, in what ways might they serve us too? Or in what ways are they giving us exactly what we need potentially on a good day?
On a
That's
good
heavy.
day.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, I guess I go to, I think that's true in some ways, but I also think there are like when you're in a depression, and I don't speak from a personal experience there, but having seen people, and you cannot get out of bed and you
Yeah.
cannot like motivate, like nothing seems worthwhile. Like maybe you hit that wall. Like, how do you climb out of that? I don't know. Like, Kyle, do you feel like you've been to that place of like complete darkness? And then how do you come out? And
Many
is it because
times.
you hit some sort of wall, like Kimberly saying, like a threshold experience, or?
I don't know if I can
Right. I guess that's $1
think
million
it's
question.
usually
How do you-
like what is causing it, but yeah, sometimes it's like I just hit a wall, and I have experienced many mornings like that where I'm like, fuck this. Like, what's the point? Like, why am I still doing this? Like, it's miserable every day. Fuck this. So I've reframed the fuck this. Here it is.
Yeah. Tell me again exactly what that reframe is.
With the fuck this.
Mhm.
I mean, when I was super depressed, I can't say it doesn't happen anymore, but sometimes if I wake up and I'm crazy depressed and my body just isn't moving, and I'm just like, fuck this. I don't want to be here. I don't want to fucking live. I'm not gonna do this shit anymore. Not necessarily making a plan to kill myself, but certainly wanting it. But that was me saying fuck life. But now I'm saying fuck that thinking.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So you're
Right.
saying fuck this to fuck this.
Yeah,
This
I
to
like
fuck
it.
this.
Yeah, like you're able to sort of separate yourself from that thinking.
It's
It
just
is not you.
noticing,
It
yeah,
is,
noticing that thinking
yeah.
and being able to say, like you were saying, is this serving me? Like, what good is this doing me?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
am I going to kill myself in 20 minutes? No, this is going to pass. This is impermanent.
That's the impermanence, which is really helpful in those moments to know it's
So
going to
helpful.
pass, right? Because feeling stuck in that moment is where it's
Yeah,
ultimately terrifying.
yeah. I've felt stuck so many times, and felt like my back was up against a wall, and like suicide may be the only option. Um, but no, I'm so glad that I feel like I'm farther away from that thinking than I ever have been.
Wow. I am too.
Yeah, definitely.
That feeling of being stuck and with your back up against the wall is,
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
yeah. Elizabeth, how are you doing? You shared some pretty vulnerable stuff about shame and your husband. And I mean, I don't know, I just want to come back to you around that because how do you live with that? How do you sit with that each day?
Well, I am really trying, and I've been saying this for about 2 months, maybe more, trying to be friends or on good terms with my MS. And I talk to my MS every night, say, thanking them, thanking my eyes for not having more. I've had a lot of retinal problems, and so I do always go to bed thanking my retina for
Mm.
for being kind to me, and and not being such an asshole to me. And I'm very frank with my eyes, saying thank you for thank you not being a jerk relative at Thanksgiving. So and I really am conscious of how much good things happen in my life. And I'm thinking more and more how grateful I am to David and noticing how much he's the glue that is incredible in my life. I know that's not sounding too toxically positive, but
No,
I,
that gratitude. You have so much gratitude. That's
Yeah.
huge.
I do, and I I am surrounded by these wonderful people I, that I love, and I feel very grateful to be alive.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop the monkey, the wonderful golden retriever that sits at my feet, which is my MS, or I don't know. I keep trying on different words or feelings or expressions from my MS. Maybe
I
that's
love thinking about the MS as like its own character,
right.
separate from us, right? I think there's a lot of power in that.
I think it's true
Yeah.
because I'm not my MS.
I think of my MS as my fucking annoying kids that won't let go of my legs,
You told me
that
that.
are pushing on
I
my
love
bladder,
that.
that
I love that.
don't like my kids.
That's so great.
And they're not going to move out when they go to
No,
college.
they're lazy bums, but it's okay. I'll support them.
I love it. I love it. And do you have any images you could share
We talked
about?
about this once before. What did I say? I mean, I don't remember, but what just popped into my head a few minutes ago was like sort of like, for me, it's like the annoying relative that like is continually trying to talk about things I don't want to talk about, or pushing me, like reminding me of shit I don't want to think about, that kind of pestering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like my annoying kids.
Yeah.
It seems like, Annie, because for you it's so much, it's because it's not as physical, it really does, the annoying part, the mental drain part, it is in the what it does to your thinking. Am I right
Yeah,
to say that?
absolutely. Very much for me, it's been much more of a mental game of how do I live with this uncertainty, and what does that look like, and how do I prepare for the future when I don't know what that looks like, and yeah, and how do I make peace with that. And it's a weird, it's very theoretical in that way, but then of course I see my brain on, every year on the MRI, and it doesn't always match up, right? Like I might be getting a lot more lesions, but I'm not necessarily experiencing those, but that just makes the anxiety even more so.
Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always match up. There's not a clear way to think about tracking it or how's it going to be. Yeah, so it's been very mental for me,
Interesting.
which I feel, of course, is like a gift, but it's also just
Maybe.
how it manifests for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, MS, there is such a psychological aspect. It's like a whole other portion of this fucked up disease. And yeah, that uncertainty.
Yeah. And I think like the self-compassion piece is huge for me in terms of thinking about how do we take care of our mental health.
Yeah.
Like for me, that means like not feeling like I have to do it all, and letting myself off the hook sometimes, and letting myself, like I would think of it as let people down, but maybe it's not letting people down. Maybe it's just saying no more. I'm not so good at that. That's my growing edge.
I'm curious, you just mentioned something that made a little light bulb go off. And then maybe this is a little bit of a diversion, but I want to know how medical interventions play into your mental health. With, like you just said, you go in every year, you might be feeling pretty fine, and then you go in and get the MRI, like, and it's necessary, but then do you how does that play into your life with MS, these medical interventions and checkups and all of that?
Well, it can be, they talk about with cancer patients like scanxiety or whatever, right? You might be anxious about getting the scan, but it also could be reassuring, but it's like this concrete manifestation. But Elizabeth, I mean, you have thought so much about the brain images. I would love to hear your take on, like, because you've sort of reclaimed your brain images in your art in a beautiful way.
Theoretically, yes, I've reclaimed. Yeah, the most 80% of the time, maybe I've reclaimed, but that's my goal. But I want to say I had an appointment, Zoom appointment with my pulmonologist. She is the most wonderful pulmonologist, and I felt it translated in about 5 days. I felt someone who loves me. I don't know if she loves me, but I can pretend she loves me. But she was so kind, so respectful. It really showed, if there's a medical provider, really shows you tiny bit of unquestioning being a rock. It's so nice to have a rock.
So nice. I think that's kind of rare, unfortunately, in the medical. I mean, I think it's so wonderful you have that. I think more often than not, in my experience, people feel like dismissed by their doctors.
For sure.
Do you feel like there's a place for your mental health with these physicians, your neurologists, and like, did they ever bring up?
Neurologists, absolutely
No
not.
way.
No way.
My functional medicine practitioner, he is the most amazing doctor in the world. He takes care of the whole body. Imagine that. It's, I think what he's doing is more effective than anything else I've tried. When I do MRIs or do the infusions, like that's when I get crazy depressed and I'm like, I don't want to do this the rest of my fucking life. That's
Yeah.
when I get like suicidal, when I'm inside a fucking tube for an hour, that banging pots and
Yeah.
pans and
Mhm.
that shit is
Right.
depressing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also to your question, like the medical interventions, Kimberly, like for me, like taking the medicines, some of them gives me a whole nother level of anxiety because you're like, no one really understands what the heck this is doing to my immune system fully.
Exactly.
And I could get some other weird complication or cancer. You know what I mean? That's like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
and you know, the neurologists are looking at like, oh, the research suggests you should do
Right.
this. They're looking at like cells. They're not thinking about people.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Like anytime I do, I am getting ready to schedule an appointment with my neurologist and tell her that I'm not going to follow her recommendation anymore.
Mm.
That's fucking scary in itself.
Yeah.
To say to your doctor, I'm not going to do the Ocrevus. I'm not going to
Yeah.
do that. How is me getting an MRI and it being good or bad going to change your treatment? Because for as long as you've been my doctor, it's been the same and it's
All down.
shitty.
And it just scares you and probably puts
Yeah.
all kinds of nasty neurochemicals in your body. And
Exactly. And like Annie was saying, like there's so much potential for other things like progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy,
Oh yeah, that one. That
fast-acting
scares
fatal
the crap
brain
out of me.
infection.
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I wrote something about that once. I'll send to you, Kyle, about like saying no to my doctor. And it was really stressful.
yeah.
And like, but it was also really empowering to be like,
Yep.
but
Wow.
even some of the people that wrote in on the comments were like, you're being selfish to your children, that you're not, you know, like people have all sorts of
Mhm.
opinions. I'm like,
this
what?
is a hard one. I had this discussion just a couple of
Hard.
weeks ago with my family because I refuse to start getting like mammograms and all. I mean, I'll do like my basic pap smears, but I'm, you know, not even 50 yet. And now they're telling you need to get colonoscopies, and it just feels like I'll do them, but I'm not going to do them every freaking year, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like we are such a test heavy society now
Yeah.
that, but I feel really guilty when I say this. And I'm even like, Annie, you're a doctor. And I'm like, oh, somebody's
No,
gonna
I agree with you. But, and I also will say, like, I mean, a lot of times doctors want you to do the test because it's protecting them. It's like
Right.
defensive medicine, right? You
Yeah.
know, whatever. Absolutely. I don't feel guilty. I agree. But I do think some of those tests are good, but at your own interval and when you feel like you want them. But I think the other piece about sort of mental health and healthcare providers, and I can say this as having worked as a primary care doctor, for instance, as much as you want to touch on that, sometimes I think doctors are afraid that they're going to open a can of worms and then like they're on this 15-minute appointment schedule. And it is, I think people are afraid of opening that can of worms, which is such a tragedy because that's what we really need to be talking about.
That's fucked up.
Yeah.
They need my functional medicine practitioner. He checks all the bases.
I still don't understand how that's paid for. Out of pocket? I mean, that's the problem.
It's
Insurance won't
expensive
cover
as
that.
shit. It is
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
They don't accept insurance.
Yeah. That's a problem.
So yeah.
Yeah, but
I'm
you made
willing-
a decision that it's worth it, and that's yeah.
I'm willing to take that route. Like I'll have to tell you guys some improvements that I've seen, some significant improvements that I've seen within my MS another time, but
Awesome.
all because of what I think this functional medicine practitioner has me doing.
Mhm.
That would be really great to explore in an episode. I know we don't try to,
Yeah.
you know, we don't want to like offer treatments and stuff like that, but I think
No,
just
I'm not. I wouldn't be offering any treatments, but what's going on with me is significant.
amazing.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
And I would say like there's an element there of just being listened to and have someone that's holding the whole picture
Right.
yes,
has impacts on your health that are positive. Just
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. And you're smile. I mean, I've seen you smile two dozen times throughout this hour. And it's like that positivity can
Yeah.
only
I never
be
leave.
affecting your body.
I never leave an appointment with my neurologist or urologist or gastrointestinal, whateverologist,
All the ologists.
all of the ologists, and be super positive. But I go to this functional medicine practitioner and spend a pretty penny, and I'm like, gosh, this is great. I'm so excited. So that in itself
Yeah.
is
That's huge.
that's powerful.
So Elizabeth, you have someone like that now too. Your pulmonologist you felt really good about.
Yeah, but I shouldn't say but she only has a little bit of time to spend with me,
Mm,
and hopefully twice a year. So that's great. No, but she's wonderful. But I want to say something about MS. The hardest thing about MS is that a lot of the drugs just don't work
exactly.
for all of us. I mean,
Exactly.
some work, but I'm bad because MS drugs have never worked for me.
Yeah.
I've been on all of them, and I'm a toxic waste dump. I really feel like I've been subjected to so much garbage, and it was the best medicine could do,
Yeah.
but it's really depressing
Yeah.
that there's I just I want something from all the years of injections and infusions and all the garbage I've been through. So I'm whining.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, but you want something to stick. You want something, like Kyle was saying, to feel like, oh, something's working here, something's helping. It doesn't have to fix you completely, but you want to not just be a pincushion in the name of
Yeah.
science.
Some improvement.
Yeah.
Like none of these, like you, Elizabeth, none of these fucking drugs have done anything for me except for continue to make me worse. Why would I want to do a drug where 75% of the people still get worse?
Or you feel like shit when you take it. Like, who wants
Right.
that? You feel worse when you take it. Can't be. Yeah. I don't know. I like back to sort of like the mental health and the coping. Like, I think whining's okay sometimes.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think whining can be good. I think also like sometimes numbing's okay. Like watching Netflix for 3 hours. I don't know. Maybe like,
Yes.
no, it's not completely adaptive, but it can be helpful sometimes.
Oh,
I
it
like
can be so
swearing.
helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, I think literally, especially if the anxiety is a part of what you're experiencing, you need distraction because you need time for your nervous system to just go, fine, everything's okay, So just obsessing about it is not going to help. You need a little Netflix or whatever.
Or fuck you.
Or
That's
fuck
why
Fuck
I
you.
wrote an
you.
article on fuck
Totally.
you because
Yeah.
it's just a release. Just
Yeah.
incredible release.
Oh, I love
Do you have someone that you can just vent with? Because I know you don't want to burden your husband, and I know you have your caregivers, but they're kind of specific responsibilities. We have this platform, but do you have someone specifically that you can just let it all out with?
My husband, this doesn't help with the dilemma I talked about before.
You can call me anytime and vent
Okay,
Same.
whenever.
Same.
same.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just recently had a conversation with Jessica, and she kind of needed a vent,
Oh,
and we were there for each other, and it was good. It was so good to see Jessica.
Yeah.
Vent or whining, you said it was okay.
Yep.
I
So
love
it's
it saying
venting,
better.
Venting, all of the above.
whatever
I
you want to
hate
call it.
whining.
All right, but venting, call it venting then. That's more powerful. It's
Okay.
important to vent sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm jumping in here because just like Kyle acknowledged the things that are going well and getting better, I think it's
Yeah.
also important to call the thing that's not so great, Elizabeth. I think,
Yeah.
you know,
Fuck
it's a
yeah.
nice release. So
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. The progression that you're going through right now, Elizabeth, it sucks. It totally sucks.
Does suck.
I mean, she and I have a joke every once in a while, like, sucks to be you, just like as a little levity, you know, you're calling the thing a thing, it does suck, but we give a little lighter spin, sucks to be you. Because you have to, if you know, it's one of those things, if you don't laugh, you'll cry or go down to that's why comedy is so healing, right?
Mhm.
So.
Mhm. Yeah. To kind of wrap this up, I was just talking to somebody who's dealt with, I think, 24 suicide attempts since she was 4 years old for suicide. And the relief that came when they finally admitted that this sucks was immense. And it was an act of self-love, you know, to finally go, this is awful. And everything that's happened has been awful. And it was not depressing. It was a relief.
Freeing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it's not a competition. It's just like, this sucks. You know, some people have worse situations, some people have better, and it doesn't matter. It's not a competition. But when you just say the thing, like, you know, if you've ever been really tired and trying to hold it together and just like, I am so tired. Like when I told my sister about my misfortune, when I had my misfortune in Buenos Aires, I'm like, I think I just need to cry. And
Yeah.
she's like, if I don't cry, I think I'm going to lose it or get hysterical. And so.
Yeah. All right, Kyle, am I remembering correctly that you have a therapist that said like throw glass bottles against the brick wall and that's going to make
Oh
you
yeah,
feel
that was some of
Love
my
that.
homework. She said, go to the Dollar Tree, buy you 12 plates, and then
love it.
break that shit.
Yeah,
I was like, okay,
I got that. I can do that.
homework.
There's something wonderful
Yeah.
about that sound too, right? When it breaks, that explosion.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, maybe your version of that is to like have your husband bring some Dollar Tree glass. Can you roll over them with your wheelchair? Yeah.
Maybe. Never thought about that.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Make a huge
Fun to
mess
break shit
all over the floor.
sometimes.
Yeah, break some, just roll over things.
Yeah.
Well,
Kimberly, in
yeah.
your chronic disease community, are the issues similar to MS?
Anxiety, you know, the main ones are panic disorder, anxiety, inevitably because of the actual physical sensations of vertigo. It just causes that initially. And then suicidality is a big one because it's that feeling of being trapped inside of a body that's constantly tormenting you, and there's that no way out. There's not a lot of relief. There's not like the symptomology is so intense and without breaks. And so there's a period where your brain just goes, I can't do this anymore. So I'm interviewing a group of 9 people and I'm in my 6th interview now. And every single one of them had a moment where they're like, I can't do this anymore. And I'm not a suicidal person, but I can't keep going like this. But I would say depression isn't something I've heard much of, other than just like the underlying, what happened to my life and my self-worth. It's more of just this panic and anxiety that just won't stop. And that was my experience. So yeah, very much so. And then with time, like I said, for many of us, we adapt and we just kind of go, this is the new normal. And when our nervous systems can kind of go, okay, I'm all right with this new normal now, things start to improve. You know, like I think there is for us and MS too, so much of this is a brain disorder. And so when our brains are in fight or flight, it's just going to exacerbate the symptoms. And when our brains can finally relax, when we can do meditation like how, when we can step outside of ourselves for a moment and see it and things chill, the symptoms get better,
Yeah,
which is wild.
amazing.
Not right away, but with practice, with time, the symptoms start to improve too.
But with MS, my symptoms have not
Oh.
gotten better,
No,
But-
that's the
but
difference.
my mental health's gotten better.
Good.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Boy, I wish, like all those beautiful paintings you did with the MRIs, Elizabeth. I wish that all those beautiful colors that you created on those MRIs were versions of what you were creating in your own brain, I mean, because I have to believe that you were transforming something on a cellular level. I'm not saying that you were curing yourself, but something was transforming.
I think so too.
Yep. Me too.
You were doing magic on yourself, wizardry. They would have burned you at the stake too.
Right? They would have.
No doubt.
Well, this is a fantastic conversation, you guys. I love this.
Yeah.
And I would love feedback from anyone viewing this. If you think this discussion is useful or not useful, we would love whatever feedback you can give us so that we can do better.
Yes.
I also want to say, just a side note, for those of people watching who live in the San Francisco Bay Area, specifically the East Bay, Elizabeth and I will be at Walk MS on Sunday, April 23rd. We'll have a booth and we'll be talking about MS Confidential and all sorts of other things that are coming up. We've had a lot of good news lately, right, Elizabeth? Especially this morning. Did you check your email?
Yes.
Okay. So, and I'm just going to brag about it a little bit because I need to. There's an exhibition that we're planning in New York, in Harlem for October. And we got notification today about publication of one of Elizabeth's latest essays. So,
Amazing. Congratulations.
Awesome. Which essay was it? Was it one that you shared with us?
Yeah, I think so. About the fires in the California fires, the fire
Oh, yeah.
season.
Yeah. Love.
I want to see that.
Yeah.
Congrats.
so we have a lot of big plans, just FYI. It's going to be a very busy year.
It is.
Amazing.
Well, is there a chance in October that we could do like a live MS Confidential?
I think that would be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are going to be there. So,
Yeah.
Annie, you can even come down well, I mean,
Awesome. I can come to New York.
I mean, there's two potential spaces. One's great, but the other one is amazing. And it would be the first real exhibition there. So, and Elizabeth and I have been, our little brains are about the things that we can do and make it really interactive. And so I'm like over the moon about it. I'm so excited about it. So, yeah, if we can make that happen,
That'd be awesome.
yeah.
I have to sign off because it's later here on the East Coast.
Right.
Gotta go.
Make food. I just want to end by saying, let's all vent to each other if we need to. We should.
Yes.
Give me a call.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm always available.
And anyone in the audience needs to vent with us. Give us your comments.
Yeah.
Tell us that MS Confidential is worthwhile to you. I loved to have that feedback.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Great to see you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good to see y'all.